Hi everyone, today we're going to be working on complex fractions. Your essential question for this set of notes: what operation or method with rational expressions have you learned in the past notes that can actually help you solve complex fractions? So some terms and definitions that you guys need to know for this. Our first term was complex fractions. So this is a fraction in which the numerator and denominator both contain fractions. Simplifying a complex fraction means to rewrite as a single fraction with no fractions in the numerator or denominator. The steps to simplifying complex fractions. Step 1, you're going to create a single fraction in the numerator and denominator. Step 2, you're going to set up as a division problem, and then you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. And step 3, you're going to simplify. You may need to factor if possible. For example, our number 1, we have a divided by 2 divided by a squared divided by 4. So again, it's a complex fraction because we have a fraction up here in the numerator and a fraction here in the denominator. So we are going to get rid of having fractions in the numerator and denominator and just create one fraction. So the way that we do that, we are now going to make it into a division problem, which it already is. So we have a divided by 2 divided by a squared divided by 4. When we're dividing fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. So we're just going to go and actually flip that last term, reciprocate it. So I have a divided by 2, turn it into a multiplication problem, and then I get 4 on the numerator and a squared on the denominator. Now I get to actually go through and simplify things out that I can. They're monomials, so I have an a here, gets rid of that 2. And then 4 divided by 2 is 2, gets rid of that 2. So now we rewrite, and we actually see that we are left with 2a, and we're left with a single fraction. For our next example, we have a fraction again in our numerator and a fraction in our denominator. So we're going to make it one fraction again. So we have to write this as a division problem so we can see that we are going to be able to. You can even write it as a multiplication problem right away because you know that you're going to reciprocate this one. So we have a 4p minus 1 divided by a 4p squared. So this is kind of nice because we already have it in our division problem here. So we reciprocated that value, that new denominator, and now we get to just go through and actually have to factor in this case. So the 18p is going to stay the same because oh, I'm sorry, we aren't going to factor. Yes, we are going to factor. So 18p is going to stay the same. We can't factor anything out of that. That denominator, though, we can factor out a 2 and get an 4p minus 1. Okay, and then we have over here, let's extend that, not equals. And then we have our numerator, this one actually we can't simplify this, it's just a 4p minus 1 and then divided by a 4p squared. So there's nothing to factor there. So now we're going to go through and start simplifying things. This 18 can be canceled out to a 9 if we divide by that 2. This 4p cannot cancel out with those, that's not allowed because this has a negative sign right there, so you can't do that. Don't even try it. And then we do have a p up here though that can cancel out this second p value. And then it looks like we have 4p minus 1 and 4p minus 1. So those actually do get to cancel. So now we should be left with just a single fraction. We have 9 in my numerator and we have a 4p in the denominator. And for our next example, number 3, we're going to rewrite that again. So let's do equals, keep your same first fraction here, b squared plus 6b plus 8. I'm going to go ahead and extend that. Do my multiplication symbol because I'm going to reciprocate those. So I'm going to put the denominator in the numerator, denominator in the numerator, and this should be a minus sign, and then that numerator goes to the denominator. So there's a 1 down there. Okay, so this one we actually do factor because we have a trinomial in the denominator and numerator. So I'm going to rewrite that numerator because I can't simplify that. But what multiplies to 8 but adds to 6? So we have 4 and 2. So I have a b plus 4 and a b plus 2. And that's being multiplied by what multiplies to negative 20 but adds to a negative 1. So we're going to factor that, and we get a b plus, sorry, not plus. You get a, we need a negative in a b plus 4 and a b minus 5. So negative 5 times 4 is a negative 20, negative 5 plus 4 is a negative 1. And we can't factor a 1. So now we get to go through and start crossing out things. B plus 4's cancel, one on top, one on bottom. So then we are left with our single value. And if you divide anything by 1, it's just going to be left with that value. So if we just did that, I want you to actually just write it as your b minus 5. We all know what b minus 5 divided by 1 would be. It'd just be b minus 5. That's your final answer for this example. For our fourth example, we see that we have a fraction in our numerator, but we don't have one in the denominator. So in order to make that a fraction in that denominator, you're going to put it over 1. So now I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my value here. So I leave the first fraction, 15 minus 15r, and then 15r squared. That's going to be multiplied by, reciprocate that, so the 1 goes in the numerator, and then we have our 12r minus 12. So I'm going to go ahead and take out some GCFs here. So I see that in my numerator up here, I have a 15 that they both have in common. And I'm going to see that I have a 1 minus r, or sorry, yeah, 1 minus r left over. 15r squared, I cannot simplify, times 1. And then I have a 12 there, and an r minus 1. So be careful because this r minus 1 and this r minus 1, so that says 1 minus r, and this says r minus 1. It's because this was not in standard form. So if we actually take out a negative out of our numerator on this one, if we take out a negative right here, that will change this to a negative and that to a positive. So now we have a positive r and a negative 1 just like this one. This negative 15 and positive 15, we're going to have that negative left over, so don't forget it, circle it so you remember it. And then we still have a 1 and a 12 that we aren't getting rid of. So we have a negative times a positive 1, so it's going to be a negative 1 divided by, and then we have our 12r squared left over. So you make sure you have to have that negative 1 in the numerator or else it would not be a fraction. Alright, and that's it for the notes today.